Today I will be telling you about my great-grandmother, Mary Draper. She was born in 1901 in Mount Hood, Oregon. One of the very few white settlers at the time. Her and her family raised foxes on a fox farm because at the time fox furs were very prevalent and in need and high demand. By the time I had the privilege of meeting my great-grandmother, she was already in her mid-80s. My earliest memory of her was as a widow. She had outlived 3 husbands at the time. Her first husband had died in a logging accident. Her second husband died of a heart attack. And her third husband died of pneumonia, fairly young in life. All of them. Between their 3 husbands, she had 4 children. While most boys don't have females as someone they would consider as a life-changing figure in their life, I do. And not only because of her stories that she would tell of how her family were homesteaders in the Mount Hood Valley, or the struggles she had to overcome as a single parent, the hard times they went through in the Depression. The stories went on and on. They were inspiring as a young kid. But the values that she was able to instill in the people that I considered role models throughout life, they all had a single source, and that was her. I considered my aunts and uncles, my great uncles, and they all had that single influence from her. So that's why I chose my grandmother, my great grandmother. Sorry. I had to go with. They all became successful members of this world and led wholesome lives. And the single source, like I said, was my grandmother. You see, my father and his 3 sisters were fairly young. There's only 4 years difference between all 4 of them. So it was one right after another. Unfortunately, my grandmother died of a brain aneurysm at age 34. No, excuse me, 35. My grandfather at the time was unable to make enough money in the valley to support 4 children and work at the same time. So he left them in my great-grandmother's care and went to California to be a merchant marine and work in the shipyards. Like I'd mentioned before, she was in her mid-80s by the time I actually was old enough to interact with her. And we had family reunions up in the valley every summer, and we spent quite a bit of time at my great-grandmother's house. She wasn't a very big lady. She was probably 5'2", and she'd lived all of 30 years since her last husband had passed away by herself, totally self-sufficient, her and her 4 Boston Terriers. She raised her own dairy cows still. She grew and canned what seemed like 1,000 different types of vegetables and fruits, jams, jellies, everything your typical grandmother would do, but 10 times more of it. And it was just her at the time, but she would give it to other family members, people in need throughout the community. And she had her own chickens, her own cows, goats, and she even had a horse, which of course was something that we looked forward to as children, going over there and visiting her. We got to ride the horse, and for 80 years old, she could still jump up there on it and ride it bareback. She could truly do just about anything. It seemed as I was younger that she could have done anything, and she pretty much did. She split all her own wood until she was about 87 years old. Split all her own wood every winter and stacked it and all that. I would go visit her, and she had quite a sense of humor. These feats that she had accomplished throughout her life weren't, I don't think, by me truly realized until I was older, and I had to go through the actions of raising children myself. Well, me and my wife, and I could not imagine doing it by myself. And she not only raised her children, but she raised 4 of her grandchildren, and she did an outstanding job. And I think that I am who I am today, and my father and my aunts and a lot of my cousins are the way they are today is because of her, because of the values that she had instilled through her teachings and the time that she would spend and the willingness that she had to share her knowledge with everybody and her values and what was right and wrong and just in this world. So, and when she was 98 years old, she got lost in her own house, and her son at the time decided that it wasn't best for her to live by herself anymore, and he was unable to care for her, so she went into a rest home, and she lasted 2 years there. She died at 100 years old in 2001, and we probably the biggest funeral I've been to this day. People I didn't even knew her. She made an impact on this world. It was pretty far-fetched for someone. They had come from fairly modest upbringing. She didn't make a political stance in this world, but she made a lasting impression. So, thank you.